Another thing that we want to pay attention to is I like to always talk about the psychological thing that happens when we're living from a meaningful life. The impact is it does reduce anxiety and stress in our lives. It causes us not to ask a whole lot of questions that are empty, because when you are living from a meaningful space, the impact in your psychological is there's greater fulfillment, there is greater joy, happiness. There is moments where there's less stress. Hey everyone, I am Sybil Bull, and we are talking about optimum living and just going over some pillars that I believe God wants us to live from. And we are going to talk about meaningful living today. So, optimum living is, of course, something that God had given me in scripture, and it's based on John 10:10. The thief comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. But Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it more abundantly. So, in the conquest of living our everyday life, God is saying He wants you not just to have the life, which He died for so we could have, but He also died and He rose again so that we could have abundant life. And so, optimum living has three pillars. And today we're going to talk about meaningful living, which is so important when it comes to this pillar. Some people, it's so close to purpose that most people don't actually think about the meaningful living or the meaningful part of life. But we're going to break that down today, and it's going to be fun. So make sure you stay until the end, okay? You don't want to miss any part of what we're about to talk about. All right, so today we are going to dive into it in a way that I want to make sure it's simple. The way I like to share or teach is from a practical, simple space where you're able to apply it and you understand it, you can see it. So when we talk about meaningful, we are talking about how we can infuse every day with significance and impact, right? So every day there's some kind of significance, that thing that you're doing, and it's leaving an impact. So whether you're impacting one person's life or you're discovering how every action can actually produce a profound meaning, that's what we're going to be talking about and diving into. So meaningful living is about making a deliberate effort to live in a way that is both fulfilling and impactful. The two words are we're making a deliberate effort to live in a way that is both fulfilling and impactful. So the fulfilling part is something that we all need to experience, fulfillment, right? That's important to our lives. But then that's us. For us, fulfillment is us. That's our experience. Impactful is what we're doing for others through our work, through our family connections, relationships, whatever. So we're impacting someone else's life. And it's finding our worth in your daily activities, right? That's that value system that we live by, the core values, who we are, what we believe. And it's ensuring that your actions contribute to a greater good. And I'll just give you like a really great example. Right before doing this, I had a wonderful opportunity to talk to one of my daughters, and she's sharing about an experience that she's having and decisions that she's making. And I paused long enough to add value and to do something meaningful with her. She needed me to listen. So I was listening, and while I was listening, excuse me, while I was listening, I was able to hear just some small things that she was having a little tiny bit of challenge with, and we walked through that in about 5 minutes, right? And the impact was that I was able to get her to make a decision that was authentic to her core value, authentic to her life, and also that was meaningful for her as much as it was for me. And so in that moment, I knew it was making an impact because at the end of our conversation, she got really teary. She thanked me and that I was, had to come and do this recording. But I also felt a sense of fulfillment, meaning that I was able to take a moment to touch someone else's life, to do something that was of value, not just for me, but for them. So making an impact, but I also felt a fulfillment. And that's how it looks when you're doing it. It's small activities that contribute to a greater good. And when we're doing that, we don't always understand that, oh, wow, I really made an impact. I didn't realize that. But then you're like, when you sit with yourself, you say, I felt so fulfilling. And it's not always about making money. It's most of the time about how you help or encourage or you're there to support someone else. It's not just about big milestones, it's about those quiet moments. I think about meaningful for me personally is I often think about how can I show up for someone in their place where it's to celebrate them, or if it's loss, how to support them in their sorrow or their grief. What is the small things that I can do to show that I'm with you? And so meaningful is really also pausing in our lives to remember what matters and how I can show up for another individual in spaces or in relationship. How do I do that? And that's what matters in life. It's not just living about a selfish space. It's about me and what I'm going to get. It's really making sure that the values that I have is being lived out every day. And when I'm living those values, it really brings a lot of meaning to my life. And some people go through different spaces of sadness because they're not aware that their life does matter and there is meaning. So let's just go a little further into how the lifestyle that you want, this optimum living from this pillar of meaningful looks like. It's those small spaces that are deeply connected with who you are. As I was saying, it's about your value. One of my core values for me is honesty. Like, that's one of my core values. I have a thing about integrity and making sure that one, I'm being honest with myself. And two, that those people who are in my space or the people that I serve through coaching, business, ministry, that I am honest. I know that truth is important because God wants us to live a truthful life. He is truth. So one of my core values is to live a life where I'm honest with myself, I'm truthful with myself. And if anyone is around or anything I do, I'm deeply connected to that core value that I'm doing it from a space of honesty, whatever it looks like. So that's just a meaningful space. And when I show up, I want that impact that I'm doing to come from an authentic space where I love you so much that I honestly will have to give you this truth, not to hurt you, constructively to help build you, or I can offer you my honest solution or summary to something, and you don't have to take it, but that's just how I rock and roll. So that's some of the things that we do when we're talking about living from a space of meaningful. So it's you got to cultivate it, okay? It takes a moment. So let's talk about let's explore it a little bit more. And each moment, when you get up in the morning, this is something that I do. I actually do ask, like, how can I actually live my life from a place that aligns with God and who He is and His Word, but also how can I bring value to someone else when I'm not self-centered and it's all about me and what can get, then I'm usually very sensitive to asking, like, okay, who's there that I'm supposed to serve? What should I be doing? Is there something I can offer in the space of value? How can I support someone? I sometimes actually sit back and think about, like, who may come on my to my mind. And when someone comes to my mind, I will always pause in my day. It all depends on what it is and how heavy it is. And I'll actually either call them. Maybe for some people, I might even send something that really like blessed me, inspired me, motivate me, gave me direction. It may be a book that I'm reading, a quote that I've had. Maybe it's a YouTube channel I send a link. Maybe somebody's message or whatever it is. I find that I want to make that connection in the way that it's happened in my life. So how do I add value? How can I help someone else? How could I be there? And in doing that, it's about a lot of benefiting other people. And that's not sacrificing your life for that space. I'm talking about those things that, again, bring fulfillment. I used to cook for 8 other people a lot of meals. And there was meaning for that. And so I enjoyed taking responsibility to find good ingredients and good recipes and, try my best to cook 30 minutes for 8 people. Like, let's get this meal on the table, 7 children and a husband. Let's go, let's go. And it was meaningful. Some people may get tired. That may not be your thing. It was impactful to my family because they were like, wow, they knew they were going to get this meal. I felt very fulfilled knowing that I was creating a space where we talked, we connected, we laughed, and it gave me a lot of joy. So that's those are the small things that actually make big impacts in our lives. Another thing that we want to pay attention to is I like to always talk about the psychological thing that happens when we're living from a meaningful life. The impact is it does reduce anxiety and stress in our lives. It causes us not to ask a whole lot of questions that are empty, because when you are living from a meaningful space, the impact in your psychological is there's greater fulfillment, there is greater joy, happiness, there is moments where there's less stress. I remember some days coming home from church and I didn't have a meal already cooked or prepared, and I just pulled out whatever was in the refrigerator and just made like a meal for my family. And the response that they would give was always like, oh my God, this was so good. And I was like, it was. And in my head, I'm thinking about that. It reduced stress because I know that what I'm doing is meaningful. So I wasn't like, oh, I got to feed them, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. It reduced the stress in my life. And I was able to do what needed to be done and produce a beautiful meal, create a recipe out of my mind, and it made me happy. And that's how it looks. It's those small things that we do in our lives that shows up in big, impactful ways that people are like, wow, I really appreciate it. Calling me when I'm down and you're like, hey, I just wanted to just call and check in on you. Those small things make a big impact. Those are meaningful things. Again, living from your place of core value, reminding yourself that all of these things matter in life, and not just the grind, not just all the responsibilities, all the tasks that I'm doing. This is not task driven. And so it helps in the positive impact of your mental health. I literally do find things that are meaningful to do for others because it impacts my mental health. It takes me out of a space where I'm not focused just on my life and I'm focused on the life of others. Here's another one that I want you to understand that's so beautiful. When you're living from a place of meaningful, you start fostering stronger communities. You know how we all go through this, we can feel lonely or alone. We have those moments. I noticed that when I started really diving into living from a meaningful space in my optimum life, I started fostering more relationships, strong relationships. I started to prioritize who they were and why they were important. It was natural. A lot of it was natural. Some of the people that I've met in the last 10 years feels like we've been friends. Some of them feel like family. So we're fostering this. It gives you the sense of purpose. It creates like a supportive environment where you have people you can trust. Now, I'm going to say on a side note, you have to heal in order for you to be able to even have this space, right? So you'll have to watch my message that I shared and the teaching that I shared on emotional wellness. You have to have emotional wellness to even foster strong connections, strong communities. And once you're doing that, there's this space where you can collaborate with others. You can have meaningful projects. You can contribute to the well-being of your community. Your community you can have several different kind of communities. So that's what meaningful looks like. It's fostering a culture of meaning, not only that benefits individuals, but also strengthens the fabric of society, leading to healthier, more vibrant communities where everyone has an opportunity to thrive. It's this space where, because you're thriving and you're an emotional well and you're bringing what you're bringing and they're bringing what they're bringing, it's fostering strong communities. I love being in sisterhood. I love meeting business women. I love meeting people who are like, this was my area of where I am. I love the collaboration. I love being able to be in communities and collaborating. Like, let's just sit down and talk together about this. Let's do a Bible class together. Let's talk about business together. Let me come in and just support you. That's meaningful. It is beautiful to have in the communities. These people don't have to be your best friend, but some of them may be your best friend. Some of them may be people that are in business spaces, so creative spaces, whatever it may be. Maybe you are a stay-at-home mom, so you find a community of moms and you're an entrepreneur, but you're a stay-at-home mom. Whatever it could be, you find communities, you foster strong relationships, you foster strong things. You bring what you have as your value to that space. Man, it is so important. That's where meaning starts to really take root in your life because it's so much bigger. It's so important. And a lot of people, especially in this decade, right? They are challenged with trust. A lot of messages about people and haters and cutting, we got the cancel culture and all of these. You have to guard yourself from that because there are good people out there. You're a good person. And so if you're a good person, there are good people out there. And you want to also make sure that when you're connecting with these people and fostering the relationship, you can foster your communities through your value system. You're not going to be and stay in any community where people are liars, cheaters, and that's not your value system. You're gonna be in communities with people who believe in serving. If your heart is a servant, and like you're a servant at heart, you're gonna find communities of people who love giving and serving and doing those things in all areas of their lives. You're not going to be restricted to not know what your community is. You're going to know what the community is that you're going to fit in, or where your community or your people are. These are my people. When I find my people, I get excited. You know why? Because I understand that this is a value community, right? We're connected based on our values. That's what makes it meaningful. So when I'm looking at it, I love innovative thinking. I am one of those people who loves deep conversations. That's not a value, but I like to be in spaces where people think deep, because innovative thinking means that I want to be out of the box. So I like those kind of concepts, and I like to sit with people who do that. I like that. So when you have your own values and you know them, then you can foster strong communities, sisterhood, whatever you need in your network, because you understand your own values. So as we're closing out this place of talking about this pillar for meaningful living, I want you just to think about some things. I want you to think about, one, what are your values, right? Maybe make a note if you're listening. What are your values? That's an action step I'm giving you. Write down what your values are. And you can have 1 to 10 values. But what I would say is circle your top 5. How do you find your value? What is it that moves you? How do you live your life? Where do you find the space where you're channeling, like, this is my non-negotiable? Like, there are things where you're like, this is a non-negotiable. That's a lot of your value systems, your value, your core value, where you're living yourself, your true self from. And when you're doing that, that's a lot of meaningful. That's where the fulfillment, that's also attached to purpose. And so if you're not sure what they are, I want you to take a moment and write them down. And if you haven't thought about them in a while, I want you to revisit them. I want you to go back and write them and look at them. If you haven't written them and you can't find them, I want you to do that. And I want you to write down as an action step 3 things in the next 48 hours that you can do that is meaningful and that's significant in life. And for those of you who are saying, I have lost relationships in my transformation, in my life, as I've changed, I've evolved, I've emerged, it's not for you to be alone. There's community for you. I want you to think about how you're fostering them and what lens you're fostering them through. Make sure that you are healing in a way where you are seeing things from a pure place and understanding that you don't want to drag your past hurts into the community and that you want to bring your best self. And you may be in a community where people are thriving and you are just coming out of surviving. And that's the community that you need, a thriving community. You don't need a community of survivors anymore, right? So that's what I want to leave with you. I want to encourage you to take a moment and do that and put it in the chat. Just put in the chat right now, living a meaningful life. Just simply living a meaningful life. I'm living a meaningful life. And if you know your core values, put one of them in the chat as well. I'd love to hear what it is. That would be good. That encourages others to see that maybe, hey, this you might connect with someone in this chat, and you may not know who they are at that moment, but you'd be like, oh my God, I saw that 10 people had the same core values as me, but I'm living a meaningful life. I love that God has given us life and life more abundantly, and that He wants that for you, and that He's designed it for you, and that it's not hard for you to live what He's already given you. It only takes your participation. So, as we close out, I just want to say thank you for joining me here in the orange chair for Optimum Living. I have enjoyed my time with you, and I want to leave this with you as we close out. You were designed to live an optimum life. Thanks for being here, and continue to have an amazing day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for being here. Mwah.